Hi there, my name's Roy. I'll be showing you some basic Photoshop stuff today. I've got this picture which we're going to do some quick tips on how to restore or how to edit a photo. I usually use Photoshop's Photoshop Beta. This is just Photoshop CC, should be the latest version. I also have this desert picture. I've already gone into Photoshop and hit New Document, but you'll see an option to hit New Document, so I'm just going to hit New. I already have something saved to my clipboard, and you can see here that it says Clipboard, so it's auto-detected that I have a picture in my clipboard, so I can just hit Create, Control V, and there's my picture of a waterfall. When you start a document, you'll always have, I'll go back to this one, you'll always have a background layer. These little eyes next to it will allow you to enable and disable the layer, so if you can't find your layer, then you've probably had it toggled. This layer is locked, so it can't be deleted until you get an additional layer in there. One of the things I'll go through first is don't be intimidated by the layout of Photoshop. It's all fairly intuitive once you get to understand some things and a few of the tools. We have, if you ever lose anything like your color palette or like your pattern presets or anything like that, or your adjustment layers or anything, most commonly it will be the layers tab. So if it doesn't look like this, that's fine. The toolbar over here and the layers over here you're most likely to lose. If you go up to window, you have a variety of different things that you can enable and disable, so make sure that you've got the layers. I've lost it, there's layers, and the toolbar should also be tools there should be enabled, and you'll have it usually on the left hand side, but you can grab all of these and move them about, or you can snap them back in, it will highlight blue. Same for these, so you can actually put it anywhere. I like to keep mine to the left hand side, my layers to the left hand side, and my toolbar to the my toolbar to the left hand side and my layers to the right hand side. Apologies. So I'll just show you some basic tools. So if you think about layers as if you have like layers of paper, if you have a cutout in one of the papers, then it will show through what's beneath it. So I'll just use the erase tool and I'll cut out this guy's face, and you can see that the layer below, the white below here, shows through. Control Z just to go back on that. That's basically all you need to know about layers. Not necessarily Photoshop, there's quite a lot more to understand. So I have here the move tool, where we can move our layer around. Most commonly you'll have a picture that fills out the whole canvas, so this workspace is called the canvas. I usually have transform controls. Transform controls just means being able to make it bigger and smaller. So it will be bigger and smaller, and you can hit yes there or yes here, the little tick, or cancel. I'm just going to cancel that. That's obviously scaling in proportion right now, but if you hold shift, you can scale it in whatever proportion you want if you have an image that you want to fill to a certain space. Usually with like faces and stuff, it's good to keep things in proportion, otherwise they look squished. So I have those shown. If you untick this, it removes them. Tick it again, you know, they turn up again. We have the auto select tool, so if I were to have another layer, let's assume that I have some brown there, and I don't have any layers selected, so you can only work on a layer if you have it selected. So I made a new layer there, and then I drew on it, so I don't have any layers selected. I have auto select on. If I click this now, it will automatically detect which layer is on top and that has the pixels that I'm selecting, so that I can move it around. I don't tend to have that on, but you can use it if you're struggling to figure out where the layer that you're trying to move is. I'll just delete that, just hit delete, or you can go in and hit delete layer. You can duplicate layers, so you can hit, I'm right clicking and then going up to duplicate or delete. You can also drag this down to this little button here, which is the new layer function, or you can obviously go up and hit duplicate. So I can drag that down and it makes a copy of it, and it will label it copy afterwards. delete that again. We can also make groups, so if I have like multiple things of like one element, like if I was doing a bunch of text and I had them all on separate layers, I could select them all and I could hit this and it would group it, or I can hit Control G. I'm hitting Control Z to go back, or you can right click and go to group from layers. Oh no. Yeah. Sorry, I got confused. A screen popped up and I was like, what's that? I'm supposed to be the expert here, but I'm going to delete those two layers. We have here the select tool. If you right click on most of these tools, you get an option, more options for it. So we have the marquee tool or the selector tool. We can create rectangular selections. This is one of the key aspects of Photoshop. If you click outside of your canvas, you can just deselect easily. Or if you select an area, you can right click and say select, deselect, sorry. You can also right click, select inverse. So instead of, yep, I know there are no pixels. So instead of the top of this guy's head, inverse, I'm actually selecting all this area around it instead if I invert it. You can have a circular, circular. Again, with these, similar to how you can manipulate images themselves with the transform controls, if you hit shift, it does the opposite, where it makes it a perfect circle or a perfect square as you're selecting. If not, it will make it an oval or a rectangle. Clicking outside, just so that you can see what I'm doing next. Next, we have the lasso tool. We have three types of lasso tool. I usually use the polygonal lasso tool, but you can also use the regular lasso tool. I'll start with that one. So we can use this to draw a selection path. That's this dashed line going round that should be moving. Yeah, it's moving very slightly to show you where selected. So this one, just the standard lasso tool, is a freeform tool that you can use to select however you want. We have the polygonal lasso, which gives us selections that are, well, polygonal. They use angles every time you click. So I'm clicking, clicking again, clicking again, clicking again. And then we can double click to end this, or if we go to the end, it'll do a little circle next to the tool icon, which means that it's going to close the loop. So close the loop there. And please. Or like I said, I can double click. So double click, and it will complete those 2 points. Magnetic lasso is slightly different in that you can use it like the polygonal lasso, but it will hug towards the nearest contrasting point. So if we go along this guy's shoulder, I'm not clicking, I'm just dragging. If you want to do a specific point, like it's not going to pick up on it, you can click and go off, and it's still trying to hug to the nearest contour point, but there isn't one. Like there on the sharp corner, I don't want it to smooth, so I'll click. And you can see how that can, oh, missed a bit there. But you can, same thing, you can click on the end or you can double click anywhere and it will make the selection for you. With these tools, if you want to work on a specific bit of it, say we want to work on the face but we don't want to work on anything else, we can do what's known as layer via. So we can layer via copy, which will just make a copy of this selection here, or layer via cut, which will cut out a hole. So copy, we make a copy of it. So there we've just got the head, but we also have the image below it as well. If I go back to just the selection, Control V, we have the selection. Layer via cut, we've cut the middle of the poor lad's head off, unfortunately. But and you can see that there's a tiny little area where the selection was, that from where we have selected. You can remove that, but it's easier to layer via copy. And then one thing that you can do, go back to the selection. If we layer via copy, say we make changes to this layer, say I draw on this layer and just go and draw on it. This is now different from the layer underneath it. So we can merge these down. So we select both of them and we can say merge layers. It's useful to, before you merge layers down, it's useful to duplicate them, Control G, put them in a group, bring that down to the bottom and just disable it so that you have those source files that you've been working on, And if you, for example, make a mistake or something and you want to go back on what you've done, any major changes or major tools that you use, you can go back and you can then take this layer, drag it up. You can reorder the layers as well, so I can put that on top, put that below, make it visible, invisible. Then if, oh, sorry, don't need to see that. Just merge these two layers. I'll just say merge layer, and now this is one. I can't move that selection or enable it. It's just one layer. It's a flat image. So that is part one of what I'm going to show you. I didn't quite appreciate how time it takes to explain those various things. I'll quickly show you the brush tool because I feel that's one of the ones that you'll be interested to know pretty quickly. I personally don't use many of the other ones here. They're a little bit more advanced, so I'll just go with this one for now. So if I create a new layer, by the way, the background, this moire as they call it, will scale with your scrolling in or scrolling out. So I'm just holding Alt and using the scroll wheel. If I hold Shift, it will go left and right. And if I hit, sorry, I'm holding Control and it goes left and right. Sorry, back to the brush tool. We have here the color that we've got. If we hit X, I'll choose a more contrasting color. I'll just use black and white. So I'm clicking on it and it gives me the option to select the tool. Top left is white regardless of where this slider is, and top right regardless of where this slider is black. So we have black and white there. Also, if we click this, it will give us black and white, this little icon here. This button also switches them over, or you can hit X. So I'm hitting X now and it's swapping them over. Let me reduce that. So we have our opacity. You don't need to worry about flow, and we have smoothing. So I'm going to draw in black. So as I draw, I'm a little bit shaky because I'm using a rollerball mouse. We can draw on our layer. It's very useful if you have to like paint in color or anything onto something. Hitting X, and I can obviously do the converse. If you hold Alt and right click, you can then move left and right to adjust the size or the diameter of it, and you can then move up and down to affect the hardness or how soft it is. So if I go to 0, it's going to put a feather on it, so it's going to be very soft. You can't quite see that. Hit X. You can see how it's got like a blurry edge to it. But I want a very hard edge for this. I'm just going to delete that, or disable it, sorry. I'm going to show you smoothing. I only found out about this a while ago. So the higher the smoothing, you can see how the pen tool, so I'm doing the same motion I did before, but it smoothed it out. And the higher the smoothing, the further behind your pointer the actual paintbrush will be, and it smooths it out. If I go back down again, you can see how it's not trailing behind and there's not a delay. If I go up to 50%, you can see how it's trailing behind a little bit, but not as much as I wax smoothing up to 100. So that's a good tool to use if you want to trace an outline or something, or you want to paint in a color for something that should be a very straight line or is a smooth curve, and you need to paint something in. Zooming in and out again by holding Alt and using the scroll wheel. Okay, so I've shown you the move tool, the marquee tool, some of the lasso tools, and a bit about the brush tool. We talked about layers and how to set up a document. That should be enough to prime you on doing a little bit of Photoshop work in future, and the best of luck.